It's almost April and you're deciding between a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. But what are the differences and how do you know which one is right for you? Choosing the right account is important because it can mean saving thousands if not tens of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of your investments. But you also want to know the things not to do to avoid paying penalties and fines which could hurt you instead. In this video, we'll be going over what are IRAs and all the pros and cons you need to know between the Roth and the traditional IRAs. Hey, I'm Kevin, and on this channel, we talk strategies to help you along on your financial journey. If you're interested in personal finance or investing at all, let me know by hitting that like button and let's jump right into it. First up, what are IRAs? IRAs are individual retirement accounts that are tax advantage accounts meant to help you with saving for retirement, in addition to things like pensions and any employer-sponsored retirement accounts like a 401k. To understand why these accounts are tax advantaged, we'll have to take a look at regular brokerage accounts. Brokerage accounts are your typical accounts you open where you deposit money into and invest with. But the money you deposit into these accounts are after tax, say tax from your job. And all the gains you get from these accounts are also taxed, like capital gains tax. For IRAs, the tax advantage portion is that you only get taxed on one of these moments, not both. This is awesome because that means less money taken by Uncle Sam, which means more money back in your pocket to spend, or ideally invest and grow even more. As with all good things though, there's a catch. There are certain restrictions you have to follow when using IRA accounts. First, there's a limit on how much you can contribute to these accounts every tax year. So from January 1st to April 15th of the following year when taxes are due. This amount varies by age, but essentially if you're under 50 years old, you can contribute up to $6,000 a year. But if you're 50 or older, you can contribute $7,000. This limit is for your overall contribution, meaning your $6,000 to $7,000 contributed is across both accounts, not each account. Although most people choose one or the other and don't split between the two. Even though you have an entire year to contribute your amount, you probably want to front load as much as possible because if you remember that time in the market is king, that'll give you the most time for your money to grow. Now that you know the similarities between Roth and traditional IRAs, what are the differences? For traditional IRAs, the main distinction is that your contributions are tax deductible. That means the $6,000 you're contributing is deducted from your income, lowering the amount of taxable income and therefore less taxes you have to pay. So if you're paying about 30% in taxes and you're lowering your income by $6,000, you're saving about $1,800 in taxes. One thing to note though is that if you have retirement accounts with your employer, like a 401k, then you may not be able to deduct the entire amount or any amount at all from contributing to your traditional IRA. Like if the amount you made at your job after any contribution deductions is over $76,000, then you can't deduct any additional amount for contributing to your traditional IRA. The downside of these accounts is that you'll have to pay taxes when you finally withdraw your money at whatever tax bracket you're at that time. With this account, you're not really supposed to touch this money until you're 59 and a half years old, essentially near retirement. If you do take out money earlier, you'll have to pay a 10% penalty on top of any taxes you have to pay on the withdrawal. Although you'll always have to pay taxes on your withdrawal, you can avoid the 10% penalty if you're withdrawing for certain occasions like having a child, buying a first home, or for higher education. Also, once you're 72 years old, you'll be required to take money out of this account every single year, called the required minimum distributions. Now, that was all for traditional IRAs, but for comparison, let's take a look at the Roth IRA. Unlike the traditional IRA, any contributions made to the Roth IRA are with your after-tax money. But the benefit is that all your gains and what you withdraw are completely tax-free. Yes, that means if you're the guy from Reddit who made millions off of riding the GameStop wave, trading with his money from his Roth IRA, all the gains are entirely tax-free. But because this account is so good, there are restrictions on when you can actually contribute to this account. If you're filing single, the $6,000 of contribution room starts going down once you start making $125K a year and goes down to zero contribution room once you hit $140K a year. However, there is a legal loophole called the backdoor Roth IRA which means contributing money first to your traditional IRA, which has no income limits, then rolling that over into the Roth IRA, basically mitigating the restriction for withdrawing money. Different than the traditional IRA, for Roth IRAs, you can withdraw any of your contributions tax-free and penalty-free, which means that this account is a lot more flexible. However, you're still not supposed to be touching the money here until you're 59 and a half or just before retirement. And if you do, you'll have to pay the 10% penalty as well as taxes. Again, there are ways to withdraw money without penalty from these accounts, like buying a house or having a child, but those are pretty limited. Lastly, with Roth IRAs, there's no requirement that at age 72 you have to start taking money out. So with all that said, how do you decide which account is right for your specific situation? To answer that, you can ask yourself this one question. Do you think you'll be in a lower or higher tax bracket when you're 59 and a half years old? If you think you'll be in a lower tax bracket at that time, then you'll probably want to consider a traditional IRA. This is because you'll get a tax deduction now, saving you from having to pay at the high tax bracket and deferring that to pay taxes when you're at a lower tax bracket in the future. On the other hand, if you think you'll be making more money at 59 and a half and at a higher tax bracket then you'll want to consider a Roth IRA because your contributions are with after-tax money, being taxed at your current lower tax bracket. Then all your gains will be tax-free when you withdraw at the higher tax bracket. Then you would have avoided having to pay taxes at your high rate when you're 59 and a half. Now, personally, what do I do? Because my work has a retirement plan and I exceed the deduction limit for an individual filer, a traditional IRA won't really benefit me. So that leaves the Roth IRA, which is still better than your brokerage account because all my gains will be tax-free. You also don't know what will happen in the future. Right now, taxes are at a historical low, which means there's a good chance taxes will go up in the future. But if you're in a Roth IRA and you don't have to pay taxes on your gains, you won't be affected by that. Then after my Roth IRA, all my extra income will go into regular brokerage accounts to invest there. Remember, both Roth and traditional IRAs are just accounts that you then have to use that money to invest in stuff. For most people, you're best off then taking that money and investing into index funds and ETFs that track the broad market and get steady growth over the long term. In the S&P 500 index, for example, which is the one most people recommend, you could safely assume a year-over-year growth of about 8%. If you want to learn more on how and what to invest in after having money in your Roth and traditional IRAs, check out my video that talks about the different funds that are good to invest in. Or if you're interested in personal finance and investing, take a look at some of my previous videos. Thanks for watching till the end, and as always, invest safe and see you in the next one.